Okay, we are now up to the conclusion. This is very exciting. Now, I'll be very honest with you. When I have had to write a conclusion, I usually would give it 2 minutes if I'm in an exam because I've spent so long writing the intro and the body, and I'm just like, oh, here's a couple of sentences. Can I encourage you students to take at least 10 minutes on your conclusion? Take time to structure it because it actually is important. And a little bit like what this cartoon is alluding to, sometimes it is like rewording your introduction, but we are looking for a few different features. So here's a breakdown for you, and I will make sure that this worksheet, which talks about your intro, your body, and conclusion, will be available to you. But you can obviously watch these videos as often as you want, just to remind yourself. So your conclusion should summarize what the author was trying to achieve. So the author was trying to achieve perhaps convincing the audience of his or her contention. Perhaps the author was trying to achieve the audience to do something, to think differently, to feel something. Your conclusion should also summarize how the author was trying to achieve this. Okay, so not only what were they doing, but how were they doing it? And so it is a summary of those devices that were used. And thinking about the Adib, it is summarizing that more succinctly. You also want to consider other things. So does the author actually consider their audience? So a lot of times that's evident in the tone that they use. Are they trying to get the audience on side? Is there a friendly kind of personable tone, or is it quite aggressive and confrontational? Are they conscious of the demographic of the audience? So when they're considering the audience, let's say it's for a newsletter for young people. Are they using the language and examples that might appeal to a young person, or is it not relevant? Okay, that's consideration of audience. Does the author leave the reader with a certain emotion? So that goes back a bit to the purpose and the effect on the reader. Are they left to feel something? Is it sort of an emotive connection because of personal stories, or because of perhaps an event that's happening that's requiring our empathy and a call to action? And on that, does the author seek to motivate the reader to act? So is there a call to action? And it could be something tangible, like I urge you to write this letter to the to the MP or a politician. Or it could be something more subtle, like I urge you to check in with your friends. It could be a "Are you okay?" day. So are they urging us to do something? And then you need to recap on the effectiveness of the accompanying image if you feel like you haven't already done that. Okay, so as I mentioned, you do talk about the image in relation to one of the arguments. You only need to really mention the image once in the intro, and then just connect it to one of your arguments. If it's an incredibly nuanced image with lots of really, really good things to analyze, you could mention the image more than once throughout the body with different arguments. But make sure that you have tied it back to the contention, okay? And as we know with the R word, the contention is not to use the R word as something that is offensive. So it comes back to language. So how is the image perhaps accompanying the contention about our use of language of people with a disability? Now, does the author, this is an interesting one, does the author accept defeat? So do they actually say at times, okay, we understand that the side that I have taken may not always been regarded as fully okay. For example, it could be a contentious issue where there are two sides to it. So are they saying, actually, we don't have it all together, and yet there are some things that we don't know and things we could do better? Or do they show that they are wholly correct? Okay, so are they taking that stance? No, this is the way it is, and this is the right way. And finally, this does relate to the second last one. Does the author ignore, or do they even reject other points of view? Now, if they don't mention other points of view, then I would safely say they're probably ignoring them, and maybe for good reason. So you could actually say that the author does not actually discuss these other perspectives. Or does the author actually mention one of those perspectives and fully shut it down? And that's their way of rejecting it. Okay, these are important things to identify in talking about how the audience tries to achieve their contention, which is what you're doing in the conclusion. Finally, how effective is the text in achieving its purposes? Now, when I say is the text, how effective is the author using textual features? Okay, so how effective is the text achieving its purpose? Now, this is a really important thing to consider, and I would actually encourage you to read what I've just shared with you now. But the last point is very important. Steer clear of providing your assessment of the issue. So rather than highlight what you believe about the issue, highlight the author's textual features and their effect on the reader. In other words, students, do not give your own opinion on the author's contention or arguments. Basically, I could write an essay, a language analysis response essay about an article, and I might totally disagree with the contention. I might totally disagree with the arguments. But if I'm analyzing it, I need to talk about, do they do it well? What devices have they used? Has it been effective? That's what we're actually analyzing. So we're not saying, yay, give them a clap, that was excellent. I really agree with that. Yep. So we really want to see you removed from it, your own bias, your own opinion, which is a hard thing to do, absolutely. So rather than talking about, okay, I disagree with that issue. So it could be like COVID or the palm oil or the asylum seekers, those issues that you all feel quite strongly about, actually going, okay, what has the author done? And has that been effective? Has that not been effective? And why? Not because you don't agree with them, but because of the use of contention and arguments. I hope that makes sense. So that's the first thing I wanted to do, is just unpack with you what we include in a conclusion. Now, we're going to look at an example of a conclusion, but we're going to sidestep and we're going to look at a totally different conclusion that's not related to the R word. The reason is because I'm going to get you to write the conclusion yourself. I have not written a conclusion for you. So I'm going to give you an example of a conclusion of a totally different article. Now, this conclusion we're going to look at now, the article, I haven't actually read it, but what I know and understand is that it's based upon someone talking to young drivers, I think mainly men, because young male drivers are usually more at risk of sort of dangerous driving statistically. So they're actually writing a persuasive piece urging these young male drivers to drive more safely and responsibly. And so this conclusion example is based off that text. And remember, the writer, the person writing this, they're not giving their own opinion about what they think about the issue. They're talking about the article, and it is objective. So both the article and accompanying image, so you'll see here they also mention the image, both the article and accompanying image complement one another in an attempt to urge the young male reader into adopting a safer and more responsible method of driving. Sadler, he's the author, first attempts to bring attention to the growing problem of aggressive and unwanted young masculine driving behavior before attempting to convince the reader into taking a more responsible approach to driving by appealing to their sense of fear for their lives and arguing against the reasons for driving irresponsibly. Right now, this person is actually outlining the arguments that Sadler gives in the article that they're analyzing. So you'll see here the first argument is bringing attention to the growing problem. Okay, so using statistics, perhaps using personal stories, and then trying to convince the reader to take a responsible approach by appealing to their sense of fear for their lives. So actually, that's another technique they're using, a sense of fear actually as a way to get the reader to think, oh my goodness, I need to do something about this in my own life. While the image serves to aid or help the article in its arguments by highlighting the tragic and uncommon consequences that may arise from reckless driving. Now that should say whilst, sorry, that was bad grammar there. I didn't write this one, sorry. Thus, the reader was able to be positioned into adopting Sadler's contention, which is to take a more controlled and calm approach when driving. This debate on the values and beliefs of young males when driving leads to detrimental consequences which will only escalate as the number of young deaths on the roads continually rises. So I'm just going to reread this. This debate on the values and beliefs of young males when driving leads to detrimental consequences that will only escalate as the number of young deaths on the roads continually rises. Okay, and that should be rise. Sorry, I can't help but edit the students' work. So again, good example of a conclusion despite some grammatical errors. And what I'm going to ask you to do now is just respond to this question. Okay, now I've written this question and I've also got this article on SEQTA. So if you go to SEQTA, you'll see this written down. Read it again, and I want you just to write down what has the student commented on in his conclusion. Have they commented on the arguments? Have they commented on the effectiveness? Have they commented on how they appeal to the audience and consideration of the audience? And we've got here, use the dot points above as a guide. So these are the dot points that we just talked about, okay? The things that you might want to consider in a conclusion. So how has the student who wrote this conclusion, what things have they thought about in writing this? Okay, and I'll say it in a different way in case that doesn't make sense. So in this conclusion, which you're going to read now, what has the student commented on in his conclusion? So you don't have to copy it word for word, but in a nutshell, what is he doing? Is he commenting on the author's arguments? Is he commenting on their consideration of audience, which I believe they definitely are, definitely an understanding of young male readers and maybe a way to appeal to them by fear for their lives? Does the author seek the reader to act? Okay, does the author leave you with a certain emotion? And is there any discussion on the relevance of the image? And there is actually. So there's a few things, and I've already given you some answers there, but I'd like you to spend a little bit of time now. I'm probably going to give you about 5 to 10 minutes just to reread this and write your responses. Could you please just write that anywhere on your iPad? I don't mind where you write that. Once you've done that, I'd like you then to go and to your R word article, the one we've been working on since yesterday. So go back to this. And this is your very last activity for today. I would like you to go to the table, and by now you should have written your introduction again. You should also have 2 body paragraphs, okay, under mine. You should also, in the last activity, you should have also added to my body paragraph and mentioned the effect of the image, okay, because I didn't do that. And now what I'd like you to do is write the conclusion, okay? And I would suggest giving you about 15 minutes to do that today. Once you've done that, class, I'm assuming this will take you to at least to the end of the first lesson. And if you're on the double lesson now as well, I'd like you to take some time for the rest of the double lesson to edit your work. By the end of your double, you should have written an entire essay response. Intro, there should be 3 body paragraphs, including my own, and also your conclusion, as well as mention of the image. So that needs to be done by the end of this lesson, and that needs to be uploaded to SEQTA. And we are now in week 7, I'm going to say. Yeah, we're in week 7. So I'm going to ask you now to please upload completed language analysis response to SEQTA week 7. And please use Teams, okay? Please use Teams today to ask me any questions, okay? Or even if you want to ask for some feedback, okay? I'm here, available to help you, okay? This is our last double lesson this week, so I really want you to use your time well. So I'm here to help you, and I look forward to seeing your responses on SEQTA. Hopefully by the end of today. They should be done by the end of today. Complete it for homework if you need. If anyone, sorry, I'm still talking, almost done. If anyone happens to have finished all of this and you've got time to edit your work, you've uploaded it to SEQTA, you're good to go, you would then find to start actually practicing with other articles. So maybe going back some of the other articles we've looked at, the Australia Day one we did last week, looking at perhaps doing a proper introduction, body, and conclusion. I know there's no image with that article, but it's still a really good article to practice writing with. Have fun, and I will see you later. Bye.